Welcome guys to another class of labor economics. In this class, mainly we will talk about the labor supply from individual perspective. Specifically, we will talk how people make decision about their work, how much they will work and how much free time they want to have. So let's start. Mainly we will have three main parts in this chapter. The first one, at the beginning, we will talk about the trends in labor force participation and hours of work, which that has two topics: labor force participation rate over time and also hours of work over time. Then we will move to talk about the theory of the decision to work with three topics: some basic concepts, and then we will analyze labor leisure choices, and also we will talk about some empirical findings on income and substitution effect. Then at the end, we will provide some policy application for the decision to work and also labor supply. So let's start from the first one. Let's talk about the trend in labor force participation and hours of work. And in chapter 2, we were talking about the labor force participation rate, which is equal to the labor force population divided by working age population multiplied by 100. And also, in terms of comparison over time, the labor force participation of female during the past 10 decades increased by more than double, while the labor force participation of men decreased due to different factors. And also, not only in the USA, we will observe the similar pattern for other countries like Canada, France, Germany, Japan, and Sweden. And when it comes to the hours of work, initially American workers worked 55 hours per week, like 50 years ago. But nowadays it declines to 40 hours per week. So it means even the working hours decreased, not only the labor force participation of men, but also the working hour decreased. But surprisingly, the labor force participation of female or women increased by more than double. So here is some statistic about the labor force participation of female. You can see from 1900 to 2011, the labor force participation of female in all categories, in all females, single, widowed and divorced, and also married female increased. But if you think about, for the case of married female, the labor force participation increased in a very high rate, because it increased from 5.6% in 1900 to 60.2%. But here, in case of a single female, there is no big changes. Although it's increased, but there's no big changes as much as we have for married women. So there are different factors that the married women, they work more, or their labor force participation increased due to different factors that they may benefit nowadays than 50 or 60 years ago or 100 years ago. And also in terms of age group, as we see here, for all age group, labor force participation rate from 1900s to 2011 decreased. For example, for the people age group from 20 to 24, the labor force participation rate decreased from 91.7%, almost 92%, to 74.7% or 75% almost. And also for the age group between 25 to 44, again, the labor force participation decreased. Similarly for the other age categories. So overall, in terms of labor force participation based on age level, so the labor force participation decreased, maybe due to different factors. But when it comes to labor force participation of female in other countries, also we can see that the labor force participation of female in Canada from 1965 to 2011 it increased. For France, for Germany, for Japan, for Sweden, and also for the United States. And also we can see here like a highly increasing rate for the case of Canada, it increased from 33.9% in 1965 to 82.1% in 2011. But we have slightly lower change in labor force participation for Japan, which increased from 53% in 1973 to 71.6% in 2011. But when we see the labor force participation of women, aged especially from 55 to 64, in all countries the labor force participation decreased from 1965 to 2011. It's due to like many different factors. So now let's talk about the theory of the decision to work. First of all, we need to say that labor is the most abundant and important factors of productions. Because without labor, it's difficult to produce something. Therefore, a country's economic performance depends on the willingness of people to work. How people are willing to work to provide their labor force in the market, in the labor market. So when we think about a person, discretionary time is 16 hours per day. If we subtract like eating time, sleeping time, 16 hours will remain. So we can spend the 16 hours either for working for pay to drive like some incomes, to consume that one for our daily needs, or we can consume that 16 hours either for leisure. So mostly we think about how to divide our time between leisure and also consumption or income. There are some basic concepts even we know from the microeconomics, that demand for goods and services depends on like three main factors. The opportunity cost of that goods, that is the market price that we pay. Because if we pay that price for this product, so we will lose to use that money for buying other products. So that's why it's called opportunity cost. And also, it depends on the level of a person's wealth. How much wealthy you are. If you are more wealthy, your demand level is high. If you are less wealthy, your demand level is low. And also it depends on a set of different preferences. Although some products are highly like expensive, but because we prefer that one, still we buy. So it depends on the three main factors. And also when it comes to labor market, also there are two main factors that affect our decision to work. The first one is opportunity cost of leisure. Because like if we want to spend our time for leisuring, so it means we cannot spend that time for working. If we spend for leisure, so we don't have that much time for working. So then we will lose some of the wage rate of the salary that we will receive. So in this factor, in this terms, as a wage rate. And also it depends on the wealth and income level of a person. Wealthier people may work less because they are already wealthy. So, and the first thing, the opportunity cost of leisure, the demand for leisure depends on like the opportunity cost of leisure. What's the opportunity cost of leisure? Which is equal to a person wage rate. Because if you don't work, it means you lose that wage rate. Or extra earnings of a worker can take home from an extra hours of work. Both of them are the opportunity cost of leisure. So, and also it depends on the wealth and income of a person. So, what are the wealth and income of persons? We have like three or more different sets of income. The first one, families holding of a bank account, financial investments, physical property or properties. So if you have more wealth and more income, maybe you want to work less. If the opportunity cost of leisure is high, so you may want to have less leisure but more working, more labor. And also, in terms of the effect of income and wage on the decision between labor and leisure, we need to think about like two factors or two facts, which is called income effect and substitution effect. So now let's talk about what is income effect and what is substitution effect. So if we want to define the income effect, so we can define or we can explain like this. If income increases, if we hold the wage level constant and fixed, desired hours of work will go down. Why? Because now we are wealthy. If we have high income, we want to spend more time for leisuring. So demand for leisure hours will increase while the hours of work supplied by a worker to the labor market decreases. So that's why income effect we can measure by this formula, which is the change in hours of work divided by the change in income while we are keeping the wage level fixed. And we assume that the sign is negative. Why? Because when the income increase, the hours of work decrease. That is why we assume it's negative. And also, we will have substitution effect at the same time, maybe. If in terms of substitution effect, we can talk like this. If income is held constant, so at the income effect, we keep constant the wage level, but now we keep the income level constant. So if income is held constant, an increase in the wage rate will raise the price and reduce the demand for leisure, thereby increasing work incentive. Means an increase in the opportunity cost of leisure. An increase in the opportunity cost of leisure reduces the demand for leisure. Because when the wage rate increases, so it means the opportunity cost of leisure increase. So we want to work more. So then substitution effect means the change in hours of work due to the change in wage level while we keep the income or wealth constant, but we assume it's greater than zero. Because when the wage rate increases, we want to work more and we want to spend less leisure. So now, how we can observe income and substitution effect? So let's talk about this one. We can observe both of them separately. It's possible to observe situations or programs that create only one effect or the other. Receiving an inheritance and inheritance is an example of the income effect. Because if you receive inheritance, so your income level will increase. So then what will happen? It induces the persons to consume more leisure, thus reducing the willingness to work. And also the other cases which both effects occur when wages increase. Both effects occur when wages rise. So the labor supply response to a simple wage increase will involve both an income effect and a substitution effect. And both effects working in opposite direction creates ambiguity in predicting the overall labor supply response in many cases. So let's see the figure 6.1. So this one. In case of figure 6.1, we can see here the labor supply curve is backward bended. Why is backward bended? Because up to sometimes when the income level increase or the wage rate, when the wage rate increase, we will increase our working hours. But when it reaches to like sometimes, then after that, because now we can earn more money with less hours of work, so then we will reduce the level of our working. So that's why it depends on how many hours we have already in working. So then based on that, it will be different. And also, if the income effect is stronger, the person will respond to a wage increase by decreasing his or her labor supply. So what does happen? So as we said that we will have income effect and substitution effect. So if income effect is stronger, so a person will respond to the wage increase by decreasing labor supply, because so now he or she may has more income, so that's why may reduce the labor supply. The labor supply curve will be negatively sloped. Thus, as the wage rate increase, so the hours of working will decrease. But in case of substitution effect, if substitution effect dominates, so the person labor supply curve will be positively sloped. What does it mean? That means if the wages increase, so the hours of work will increase. So now, let's talk about how to analyze the labor and leisure choice. The theory of labor supply is easier to understand by using the concepts of indifference curve and budget constraint. For example, we have a preferences or utility function, which is a function of income and also it's a function of leisure. Why we didn't include labor? Because we think labor is bad, but leisure is good. So we consume leisure and we consume for consumption, which is why here is income, and income means like what we have, we consume. So U is an index that measures the level of satisfaction or happiness or utility, and Y is income level or wage here, and L is leisure. Higher utility or higher satisfaction or happiness means higher level of utility that will make a person happier. Along the indifference curve, we have this formula. So if we keep the overall utility, the change in utility equal to 0, it means if we keep the change in utility fixed, so the change in income multiplied by the marginal utility of income plus the change in leisure multiplied by the marginal utility of leisure is equal to 0. It means there is no change. So it means if we increase income, when there is income level is fixed, so we need to work more and we need to reduce our leisure. So here, if we want to find out the marginal rate of substitution of income for labor, so it will be equal to the change in income divided by the change in leisure, and is equal to minus marginal utility of labor divided by marginal utility of income. This is the formula for the marginal rate of substitution of income, or in this case wage, for leisure. And also, let's talk more about indifference curve. Show the various combination of many income here, which we spend for goods and services, and hours of leisure or work per day that will yield the same level of happiness. So as we use different combinations, so we'll still have the same level of happiness. So let's talk about characteristics of the indifference curve. Consumer preferences are usually northeast on the higher or highest indifference curve. So let's see this one. So the utility curve of B will give you more happiness than the utility curve of A, because the higher utility, the higher indifference curve shows the higher utility. So that's why indifference curve B may shows higher utility than indifference curve A. And also, indifference curve do not intersect. You know this one from the microeconomics. I will not talk more about. And also, indifference curve are negatively sloped. Let's see figure 6.3 here. As you see, when we increase the hours of work, hours of leisure per day, sorry. When we increase the hours of leisure per day, we will have less income or less money income, because when we consume more leisure, it means we will have less times for working. Therefore, when we increase our leisure, we need to give up some of our wage or some of our income. So that's why it's negatively sloped. So the next one, indifference curves are convex. It's steeper at the left than at the right. When income is high, leisure hours are relatively few. Here we see, when income level is high, leisure hour is not so much. When income level is low, leisure hours so much. So that's why it's steeper when income is high. It's flatter when income is low. When income is low, so here the opportunity cost of leisure is not so much. But when income is high, the opportunity cost of leisure is so much. So we won't consume more time for leisure, but rather we want to work more in order to earn more income. So moving down on the indifference curve, reflect value. When income is low, leisure hours are abundant. When income is low, as we see here, when income is low, we'll have abundant hours of leisure because now the opportunity cost of leisure is not so much, as low. So let's move to the six numbers or the six characteristics of the indifferent curves, which indifference curves differ among individuals because of the differences in taste and preferences or value. Let's see figure 6 and 6.4. As you see, there are two different persons. They may have different indifference curve. For the person A, who places high value on extra hours of leisure, so it means the opportunity cost of leisure is not, so he or this person wants to value more to leisure. So the opportunity cost of leisure is not so much high. So and also person B, who places low value on extra hours of leisure, so there is the opportunity cost of, in this case, the opportunity cost of leisure is so low, and the previous opportunity cost of leisure is high. So this is what are the indifference curve characteristics.